reality, that is not the way that things are supposed to go. And the reason why this is an atrocity, the reason why these things sound so bad, so evil to us, is because they go contrary to what we know in our heart is the way things are supposed to be. That thing that we're measuring against, that yardstick, that the way things are supposed to be, is what we're going to talk about a lot more about later. When I was in college, I took a class on the philosopher David Hume, who has a lot of negative things to say about religion. And he wrote a book called Dialogues Concerning Religion. And in that, there's a bunch of people talking, and kind of the person that you're supposed to think is the smartest is this guy named Demea. And he wants to point out that this world is horrible. And he's trying to convince the other people that how can you believe in a God when this world is such a horrible place? And he gets frustrated with the other people because they want to try to argue with him that it's not that bad of a place, that the world isn't dark. Demea quotes Milton when he finally just wants to say, he's just trying to prove his point that this world is dark, it's horrible, it's ruined, there's nothing but sadness here. He quotes Milton, he says, "The world is dark. There's intestine stone, ulcer, colic pains, demonic frenzy, moping melancholy, and moonstruck sadness, and pining atrophy. Wide, wasting pestilence, dire was the tossing, deep the groans. Despair tends the sick, busiest from couch to couch, and over them triumphant death his dart, shook, but delayed to strike, though often invoked, with vows as their chief good and final hope." In Paradise Lost that he's quoting from, John Milton makes the case that this world is so messed up, this world is so dark, and when we start to ignore the things that we do to entertain ourselves, to hide us from this darkness, death seems like the only grace. When we consider the horrible things that people have to go through, it's a dark and miserable place. Again, we don't like to talk about that. It makes me uncomfortable too. But this is the reality. This is the world that God was so concerned with. In John 3:16, this is the world that He so loves. I've been teaching a Sunday school on sin this last month. And we've been talking about what sin is and how it works. And we came to the conclusion that rather than just sin is, us being sinners as people who do these things, we realize that sin is more of a disease that we're infected with from the time that we come out of the womb. And it just is this miserable power that's constantly infecting the way that we do things, the way that we feel, the way that we think, the way that we treat other people. And if that's just me, and there's 7 million other people that have the same disease, you can imagine just how much that'll start to ruin God's creation. But now I want to go back. I want to talk about what that thing was that we were measuring it against. When we read all those headlines and we say, that's wrong, that's bad, I don't like that, that shouldn't be that way. What is this thing that we're measuring it against? High school students, what do you think? What's the word that we're measuring it against? Shalom. So proud. Today we lit the peace candle. Today I'm going to talk about how Jesus is the light of peace. And the word peace comes from this Hebrew word called shalom. And it's hard to talk about shalom in English because we don't have any words that just translate over. Because shalom is more than just a word. It's like a concept. Like when you go to Hawaii and they say aloha when you come, and then they say aloha when you go, and you're confused. I thought that meant hello. Does it mean goodbye? Shalom is a concept that talks about the way things are supposed to be. The theologian Cornelius Flanagan says it this way. He says, the webbing together of God, humans, and all creation in justice, fulfillment, and delight is what the Hebrew prophets call shalom. We call it peace But it means far more than mere peace, or a mere peace of mind, or a ceasefire between enemies. In the Bible, shalom means universal flourishing, wholeness, and delight. A rich state of affairs in which natural needs are satisfied and natural gifts fruitfully employed. A state of affairs that inspires a joyful wonder as its creator and savior opens doors and welcomes the creatures in whom he delights. Shalom, in other words, is the way things ought to be. The way things ought to be. When we have a yearning, when we have a desire for what we want to attain, even if that desire, even if that yearning is off base in some way, there's a shadow, there's a glimmer of this shalom. As people who are made in God's image, we are programmed to be little shalomers. People who work towards shalom. People who enjoy shalom. People who are part of the system to promote shalom. Of course, we know that didn't go the way it's supposed to be. That sin entered our world, and now that program has been ruined. But it's still there, and we still know that we have this yearning. That's why things like peace, that's why things like love and harmony sound so desirable for us. But it's more than just that absence of conflict. It's more than just a breath of fresh air, after the work is done. Shalom is working. Shalom is flourishing and prospering and working towards the way things are supposed to be. It's this struggle between experiencing darkness and having this feeling that we're made for shalom that inspires so much fighting in politics, so much arguments and about methodologies and the way to make things better. The church father Irenaeus said, "The day will come where we will experience shalom. The day will come in which vines shall grow, each having 10,000 branches, and in each branch 10,000 twigs, and in each twig 10,000 shoots, and in each shoot 10,000 clusters, and on every one of the clusters 10,000 grapes. And every grape, when pressed, will give at least 225 gallons. And when any one of the saints shall lay hold of a cluster, another shall cry out, 'I'm a better cluster. Take me. Bless the Lord through me.'" A day will come where we set aside our selfishness. The day will come when we set aside our pain. A day will come when we set aside all those things that block us from experiencing the grace of God and giving that grace to other people. Well, we will work in harmony towards flourishing to God's glory and His enjoyment. The night that Jesus came into our reality, that was His mission. To restore shalom. To destroy darkness. He's the light. The light comes from Him. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys. That's shalom. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There came a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. There was the true light, which coming into the world enlightens every man. John understood that Jesus was the light of shalom. That while we're living in this dark world, this world that's cut off from God, while this world that's cut off from goodness and from hope, that Jesus was the answer. The shalom. Now the question is, okay, that's nice big picture stuff, and we're kind of talking about the world in this, big capital W way. But what about my life? what does Jesus mean to me? Well, I would say that the same thing applies to you. We don't like therapy. We don't like talking about ourselves too much. We don't like thinking about ourselves too much, doing introspection, because we know what lies underneath the surface. We know the darkness that's there. And we know that even though we want things like love, we want harmony, we want peace between us and other people, peace between us and God, peace just within ourselves, that oftentimes, more often than not, we choose darkness. We choose things that keep us away from God. We choose selfishness.